Okay, so we can start the afternoon session. Now there is this guy, Nicola Porta, that is going to speak about the situation of native trees in Trentino. The preparation of this presentation have been done together with Francesco Festi of the Foundation Museum of Rovereto. He is a real botanist. He was invited to present himself, but he couldn't come, so he asked me to perform it. Okay, so first, what is Trentino? I think you know quite well nowadays, many maps. So it's several valleys together with similar history, culture, and of course also forest culture. So it's very homogeneous as from the forest point of view. So these are the main valleys. So the red one is the Valley of Adige. We more or less we are here in the middle here, located at San Michele. And in the north is South Tyrol. That is together they form a region called Trentino South Tyrol. And then in the east there is a Veneto. In the west there is Lombardy. Trentino has no common border with Austria, but it was under Austria domination for quite a long time. Some statistics: the forest land is 600,000 hectares. 63% is forested, so it's the highest of Italy. It's not only the highest of Italy, but it's the highest of Italy of very high quality forest, because there are many other regions that they may have 50% or even similar, but they are mainly Mediterranean forest. So they are not high forest, they are coppices, a lot coppices, but high forest like in Trentino, there are not many. The land is in the middle of the Alps, so that's why 70% is over 1,000 and 20% is over 2,000 meters of elevation. And only 10% is sort of agricultural land below 500 meters, even though now the grape is going to grow over 700, 800 meters even, because the global change, blah, blah, blah. We have several parks.
Sarò
Tony outside, you can tell Tony that is yeah. Parks, we have regional parks and we have national parks also inside Trentino. Something very special that can help to understand the further of the presentation is the ownership of the forest. It is a very, very special Trentino, because most of the forest is private. 2/3, actually 3/4 is private. As you see, 75%, 76%. And this is very peculiar in all other parts of Italy, and I would say most part of Europe also, where the forest normally is private. In the closest Gemini province called South Tyrol is the opposite. 3/4 is private and 1/4 is public. That makes difference, big difference on the management, of course. Annual mean temperature, so it's because the mountains, we have big difference in temperature. In the bottom of the valley, you can see this is the hottest place is the Garda Lake, and here there are mountains over 3,500 meters, close to 4,000. And the rainfall also, there is a big range between over 1,500 until maybe 600 or 500 in some places, but normally is Trento, for example, it's around 750 per year. And the distribution is alpine distribution, so it's more common rainfall during summer than during winter. Actually, the months where we have fire in forest is February, because it's very dry. So if there is a wind called föhn, The fen is very dry, and we may have problem with fire. While in Italy, it's totally opposite, in the South Italy, Central Italy. This is a map of Trentino. I reported the main city and town. The biggest city are Rovereto and Trento. Trento is about 100,000. Rovereto is about 50,000. This is to introduce also the part that will be explained later by Dr. Ulrici Giovanna, that is speaking about the urban vegetation in Trento, is a partner of the project. So only 2% of the Italian land is Trentino, and the altitude is between Garda Lake 65 meter to 3,700 and plus. This is the geological map of Trentino. So you see this pink color is pink, more or less, and the red green. Red green are intrusive, effusive porphyric rocks. So they are acid rocks, acid bedrocks. While the pink one is carbonate, and in this part there are the Dolomites. Dolomites is a calcium and magnesium carbonate. They make beautiful color and beautiful shape of the mountains because they're special kind of rocks. This is important also because the soil, as we were speaking this morning, is an important part of the forest. So these are the two main difference: porphyric, the blue one, and brown, the carbonatic rocks. These are distribution of density of naturalized, not native tracheophytes on the left, and each of these pixels is 1 square kilometer, and the color, the color variability is the number of species, tracheophyte species included in each square, in each pixel. So it goes from 1 to 3 to 26 to 78. These are, most of them are herbaceous, not native. When we speak about phanerophytes, so woody trees, woody plants, that means shrubs and trees, of course, they are much, much less. And you see in each pixel, it can be varied from 1, 2 to 6, say 16. These are the general map, as we saw before. This is the specific map for woody species. All the data, or most of the data I will show you in this presentation, are coming from this very recent book, huge book, more than 1,000 pages, Flora del Trentino. A co-author was also Festi, but the first author is Prosser, Filippo. Still, all the authors are from the Museum of Rovereto, Civico Museo di Rovereto. They start with 3,138 species, native and not native, of course. Okay, these are the extinct. Of course, it depends when they calculate, because before they were much more extinct species, for example. And the remaining are divided by casual and stable species. And of course, most of them, fortunately, are autochthonous, and few, 254, are the allochthonous, the not native. If you take away, if you filter with the woody species, are only 32. I want to specify that these 32 are not included the species, the urban species, but are the species in the wild, in the forest, in the cultivated or not cultivated forest, but in the wild. Okay, because of course in the city we have many more not native species, but I am not speaking about that in this presentation. And these are the 32. This is the one list, 16. And then I select those that are more important with a pink color, and also important but less frequent in yellow. And the same with the second list of 16. The most important, Paulownia, Pinus Nigra, Robinia, Pinus Ulmus pumila. And the less important are Prunus serotina, very few we have. Platanus hispanica, or acerifolia, as you want to call it. And I put also Vitis riparia, even though it's not is a shrub. Of course, is a vitis. It comes from the cultivation of the Vitis vinifera, because the rootstock of Vitis vinifera was escaped, and in the wild it's also hybridized with Vitis vinifera, riparia and vinifera together. So one of the most interesting things in Trentino is not which species are present, but which species are not present, and perhaps to find an explanation why. Because what I listed in this blue color are species that potentially could be cultivated in Trentino, in several places of Trentino, because Trentino is even more variable than South Tyrol, because there are much more difference in elevation and expositions and soil and so on. So you can have also xerophilous species, and you can have alpine species at the same time in the same land. And so, for example, we don't have any cultivation of pseudotsuga. And as far as I know, they never tried even to plant pseudotsuga, even though I know places where there are scattered few plants up and there, but not as a plantation, not as a cultivation, not as a business, not as a production. Pinus strobus, Pinus vallichiana, Pinus radiata, that are present in other parts of the Italian alpine space regions, for example, in the west, or even in the very east. They are not present in Trentino. Pichia sitkensis, very common in Central and North Europe, in England, in Scandinavia. We have also similar climate like Scandinavia in some parts of Trentino, but we don't have. Omorica is coming from Balkans. Pungens, no, we don't have. And also cedrus. Cedrus we have only in garden for ornamental, but never plantation of cedar. But we have in Italy in many places plantation of cedar for wood. Laris is the same, Camecipheris lawsoniana, Quercus rubra. I think this would be very suitable for Trentino, but no way. Populus canadensis, they need flat. And in the flat, we have only grape and apples, so we don't have lands for Populus, actually. Fraxinus is another species that is not present. We have a very little of Paulownia tomentosa. I will show you tomorrow. We are going to visit a small plantation, and hopefully we are going to visit wild natural dispersion of the species in another places, and Prunus serotina. So to reply why we don't have is because we have to understand that Trentino is perceived by the local people, but also from other Italians, as not as a forest, as a garden, actually, a place for recreation, place for, we have, I would say, except sometimes with storm, we have a very nice forest, a very nice forest landscape. And in the past, the forest was extremely important for the economy, not anymore. Since 1950, or let's say 60, we don't cut enough. We cut half of the annual increment. That means that the forest is growing, and more cubic meter every year, stay there, they are not cutting. We cut half of the annual increment, so who is making silviculture? The storm. When the storm is coming, he makes silviculture, of course, where he likes, where the dimension that he likes. And that maybe is not very wise. We should anticipate and make an active silviculture more than what we practice now, actually. Now I want to introduce you this case of Pinus nigra, because Pinus nigra is I would say, the only conifer, on my opinion and on many other people's opinion, not native, or is considered not native here in Italy, in North Italy, except in few municipality, I would say, small places, small lands in the very east part of Italy, northeast part of Italy. And we have in North Italy, we have this subspecies nigra. I want to show you this very nice map made in the 70s by Walter and Straka. They indicated a lot of Pinus nigra around the Mediterranean Sea, especially in the north side of Mediterranean Sea, with some exception. But how many? The Pinus nigra is the green circle. It's including at least 4 different subspecies: Cruziana, Laricio, Nigra, Sensu stricto, and Palasiana. And each of them also has some kind of subspecies. As you see, in Italy, we have in South Italy, including Corsica, and Central Italy and Calabria, is Pinus Laricio. There is in Spain and in France a little bit, in the Pyrenees. And there is this Nigro Sensu stricta in Slovenia, in Austria, not too much in Austria, more in Slovenia, and in the Dalmatic area, and also in Dinaric Alps until Albania or even Greece. And then there is this eastern species, Palasiana, quite wide along all Aegean Sea and Black Sea, and is completely full in Greece, in Turkey, and in Greece also. What is more interesting compared with this map is this map. This map is the results. Yeah, it's better here than in the computer, so you have better view. This is the map coming from the European Atlas of Forestry Species, published by EFI, and EU4Gen. EU4Gen, it tells you the native area. The European Atlas of Forestry Species tells you about the national inventory data. So what you see as blue spots are plantation, artificial plantation. What you see in green are native areas. As you can see, in North Italy is mostly planted. In France is planted a lot, in Germany. And that's very funny, as you indicate, Martin, this morning. In some country, like in Holland is full, but in Belgium is not. And they are very close to each other. That's some political choice, I think, something like that. In Czech Republic is full, in Hungary is full, and also Slovak Republic. But for example, Serbia and Croatia, not too much. Poland, very little. From the eastern country over Poland, I think there are no data. That's why they didn't indicate anything. But if you see, all the Denmark is full of black pine. And nothing is natural there. And actually, I know that they also planted provenances from Calabria in Denmark. Perhaps not only provenance from Calabria, but for sure there are, because they are very resistant to some disease, some, I don't know. But this is the situation. That means in Europe, for sure, this species is mostly planted. And why is planted? It's the same reason why it was planted in Trentino, because it's extremely robust, is extremely adaptable to very, very poor soil. We are looking at glacial debris in Trentino. There's a big area where you see still the debris of the glacial age, and the soil is extremely, extremely poor. And you see in these parts is Pinus Nigra, this part is Pinus Nigra, they are plantation. But look how make a natural regeneration on the rocks. So it's very adaptable. And at the same time, is a conifer. Conifer 100 years ago means money. Now I wouldn't say so much money, but at that time it was much better a conifer than a broadleaf. And a broadleaf here means oaks. In this place, not even fagus can grow, but maybe some oaks, some roverella, some Quercus pubescens. That the value is only for fuel, not for building something from that. These species have a huge elevation range. So it goes from very low to Garda Lake, let's say, to 1,600, even higher. Later you will see the records. And this is the production. The production is not very rich, because the wood is very rich in knots, and that doesn't make a good wood normally. Even if you want to use this for pulp, it's a bit complicated, or other furniture is something very, wild. Most of it nowadays is used for fuel, but the people, they don't care. They want to take away because it has already developed the soil quite much. So it's a pioneer species. It made its job very well, and now should be substituted from something else. There are, for example, colleagues, pathologists, they want to save this tree. They ask money to make project, and the financier, they say, why? We don't pay for taking this species. We pay if you take away these species. Why? Because now, after 150 years of plantation, between 100 and 150 years of plantation, it's getting less vigorous, it's getting weak, and it's very sensitive to drought, especially if the drought is more frequent. Then the tree doesn't die because of the drought, but can die by opportunistic fungi. The main one are Chenangium ferruginoso and Diplodia pinea, or Spheropsis sapinea, as you want to call the main one. And so from time to time in Trentino, you see a huge surface of plantation, totally brown. Maybe the year after there is a good rainfall, so the pine gets more rain, it can recover a bit. But when you get more drought here, close each other, then you lost the tree. And okay, this was the occurrence in Europe of Spheropsis sapinea, and something relatively recent, because it started in the 90s, even in the 80s, end of the 80s, and then it's growing. Now, this is still old map, because now you have in Sweden, you have in Finland, because the global change. Another problem, this is a big problem, not only for the trees, but also for the humans, is a process-running moth. It's Taumetopea pitiocampa, and in Italy, I think also in other country, I guess, there is a mandatory law. So you had to make mandatory, you had to make control. If it's growing in your property, it's on your responsibility to take care and to cut the nest, because the powder of the nest is very toxic for the skin, for the lung, for the eyes. If there is a wind in the forest, you get this powder, and then you get sick, you get to the hospital. And there are more and more, because this insect is limited by cold, but because there is less and less cold, there is more and more insects. So the processor moth is going up to the mountains. Before it was only in the lowland, now is going upward. So because of this problem, this is the situation in Trentino for the flora of Trentino. You see, is spread in all the valleys almost continuously, but it can reach 1,800 meters from the very bottom one. These are the elevation and the frequency of each elevation. Most of them is between the 0 and 100, 100, 200, 1,200. But this is the situation in Trentino, but I can say that in Lombardy or in Piedmont is not very different. It's similar. They have a lot of plantations they want to get rid of, and they want to substitute maybe with other conifer. But conifer that grows at low elevation, there are not many. There is a cypress, there is a, some, of course, not native, because native at low elevation, we don't have. Okay, we have this Mediterranean one, but they don't fit very well here. The Pinus pinea is too sensitive to cold. Pinus pinaster also. So they need something that can have some resistance to the cold, but at the same time can stay lower in the valley because the landscape. Because otherwise, in the lowland you have only broadleaves, no different colors. And because Trentino is a garden, we need a landscape more than wood. So I go faster in a gallery of other not native. This is a situation with Robinia pseudoacacia, sorry, also here it's important, the elevation range is very big. And of course, if you ask to a normal citizen, normal people, they never thought that this was not native. This is native, absolutely native. And it's very good wood, extremely good. And it's very good for honey production. And it's very good for soil. It's very good for roots compactation, the defense of the landslides. So many people, they say, why we have to get rid of this? No, 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 this is fine. But of course, in natural protection areas, it may give problem, because of course, even those areas are not at the low level, they are in the mountains, but because the adaptability to live at certain elevation make competition with the natural species, blah, 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 you know. So it's a sort of trade-off, you know. So first, we cannot get rid of, because it's impossible. It's really impossible after 400 years of introduction. The first introduction was in Paris. Robin was the nurseryman that planted the first plants in the middle of the city of Paris. He's still alive there. And then spread in all Europe. Most was helped by the railways, because when they built the first railways, they plant this species to make stronger the platform of the railway, you know, to keep solid. And from that, of course, it went very well. In Hungary, they have make use of it. So they make breeding. They have developed different ornamental clones, different flowers, color, different shape. With they have this how you call this sort of protection in the stem, in the stem. Yeah, horns. Sorry, horns. So they have a variety without horns. They have variety totally circular for garden without pruning. It's just natural. So they have get used of it. And in general, in Europe is well accepted. Ailanthus altissima, that's not the same. Even though I know that in Austria, in the 50s, they tried to use the wood. There are several publications made in Austria, 50, 60, they tried to use the wood of Ailanthus. Most of you knows why it was introduced. It was introduced mainly for substitute morus for the production of silk, because there was a similar silkworm that could feed on it. But then they realized quite soon that the quality of the silk was not at the same level, but of course it was already here. So it was not possible to come back. And now we have. But fortunately, this is a dioic species, so there are male and female, and maybe this helps a little bit to make control, because if you control the female, you have a strong control of the species. But it's not easy, at least here in Italy, as you have seen from Canton Ticino to here, is full everywhere. We have a big tree just on the door of the institute, huge. They spread the seeds everywhere, it's female. These are our most interesting species, Paulownia tomentosa, coming from China. And so the color that means is naturalized. The black one, the red one means casual occurrences. And you see, tomorrow we are going just to visit here, this valley. This valley is called Val Sugana. We are going here to see the plantation in the very end. And then if we are lucky, it's not raining so much, we are going to see a natural spreading here. Because it was introduced in a garden in the beginning of the 20th century, in a garden of Levico, and we think that from that it started everything. And so here there are lakes. You may see some blue color. In the middle of these two lakes is full, especially after the storm. We have found after the storm many young seedlings, maybe 2-3 meters high, very, very common. But there are also in other parts of Trentino, of course. And Ficus carica is also another alien species. Well, the people, they like, because there is at least something to eat. Even though there are many variety and many different kind of fruits, so it's cultivated in some cases. Not in Trentino, it's more wild, but in maybe some farms they have some trees just for local consumption. And we have Juglans regia. All these are archaeophytes. It comes with the Romans and perhaps earlier, of course, because of the fruit, and now is integrated perfectly in the landscape, and nobody wants to get out of it. Ulmus pumila is a different history, because in the beginning of 19th century, we got the first record of one terrible disease in all Ulmus genera, almost all Ulmus species. And one of the few species that they show some resistance was Ulmus pumila. That's why after this disease is called Dutch M disease, because it was found in Holland in the 1918. After the first spreading of the disease, there was a there was a breeding program to try to find resistant trees. And in the beginning, was able to find resistance between the European species. So there were many hybrids between different European species, and it works. Then in the 50, 60, 70, arrived a very bad mutation, like a COVID, you know, different. And then came another mutation of the same fungus. Those that were resistant to the first wave, they were susceptible to the second. So they have to start again the breeding. The breeding is a very long work because it takes many years. And then they use Ulmus pumila as parents in this crossing, in these hybrids. And now also Ulmus pumila itself is come from China, from Russia, from Siberia. It's called Siberian Elmus also. It's a relatively good resistance, but the shape is different. The leaves are smaller. The appearance is different. But nowadays is a problem, this species, because it can cross easily with our native species. And so there is a strong introgression of this species inside Ulmus minor, Ulmus glabra, with many mixed hybrid. This is the problem when you introduce species with the same genera that you have inside another species with, yes, I finished. This is Ulmus levis. It's common in Central Europe, North Europe, in France, in Scandinavia, in Russia. We imported, and it grows very well because it seems resistant, but actually it's not. It doesn't get the insect, the vector, but is susceptible to the fungus. Acer negundo we have along the rivers mainly. Is not a, sorry, it's not a very, very strong problem, but Prunus serotina we have very little, as you can see, very little. While if you go in northwest Italy, it's a real problem there. Platanus hispanica is escaped from cities because it was planted in the city. Is the cross between Orientalis and Occidentalis. After 65 million years, they met in England. They made Acerifolia or Hispanica is the same. And this is fertile, so they were not species. They were same species, practically biological species. And it escaped from cultivation, and we have now in the wild. But mainly at low elevation, as you can see, at low elevation. Normally it grows along the rivers. In Sicily, we have the Orientalis, the wild one, but only in Sicily. Alepensi, we have just a few. Is a very Mediterranean pine, extremely strong, drought resistant. And okay, Amorphofruticosa, Brusonium, I go faster, Celtis occidentalis, Vitripari, I told you, is what it remains by the rootstock to avoid the disease of the grape 150 years ago, and now is in the wild. It doesn't make grape, it makes fruit that is not edible, but it's a vitis anyway. And then just for fun, two beautiful alien. These are really alien. On the right one, you have Volemia Nobilis, was discovered in Australia, think about 1994. Only 100 plants. It's very, very strange because it doesn't make any lateral buds. Each branch is made with only one bud, so it grows one by year, one by year. And this other one is Dracena cinnabari, is growing in an island close to Yemen. It's very resistant to drought, as you can see. It seems very funny. I mean, just for fun. Okay, thank you very much.